The Roman triumph, the most outstanding honor a military leader could hope to achieve. We get a fairly accurate description of what the triumph was from the ancient Greek historian Polybius, a spectacle in which generals bring right before the eyes of the Roman people a vivid impression of their achievements. Traditionally, it was a publicly held civil ceremony and religious rite, sanctifying a military commander's success in war. It gave generals the opportunity to present and reenact their military victories, whilst also giving thanks to the gods for safeguarding him and his army. In this video, I'm going to show you just how they did this. The triumph was essentially a solemn procession led through the city of Rome itself. It had a particular form with several features varying from the start of the procession to the end of it. Through analysing our primary and secondary sources on the topic, we can actually reconstruct the basic form of the triumphal procession, allowing us to better understand several aspects of the ceremony. Before getting onto the procession, however, it is important to understand the process of becoming a triumphator, that being the person that is triumphing. Specific sets of requirements had to be met before a triumph could even take place. Chiefly, there were rules and regulations as to what a general had to accomplish before triumphing, and they developed over time. For example, it was always established that war should have been a contest against public enemies and not a civil contest. So essentially, a general had to complete a foreign war campaign or conquer new territory for Rome in order to triumph. However, once generals started seeking triumphs for small skirmishes outside of Roman territory, a law was declared, stating that at least 5,000 of the enemy had to have been defeated in a single battle. There were some special exemptions sometimes, but these were rarely given. Secondly, the general had to be saluted as imperator by his soldiers. This title was given to a victorious military commander under the Republic or the Empire. Once this was done, he sent sprigs of laurel with an account of his accomplishments to the Senate, so they could announce his victories to the public. Finally, the general had to assemble the Senate just outside of Rome in order to ask for permission to triumph. If the general met the standards of the rules and regulations, then his title of imperator was confirmed by the Senate and the people, allowing him to triumph legally. With all of this in order, we can now get onto the actual mechanics of the triumphal procession. First and foremost, it's important to mention how the public would have prepared for such a ceremony. The Romans would have essentially shut down business in Rome and gathered along the pre-established route of the procession, where they would have erected scaffolding in part of the city to get a better view of the spectacle, all whilst dressed in special white garments. Now, there's a lot of scholarly debate as to where every twist and turn of the procession was. The closest we get to a full reconstruction is from the Jewish historian Josephus on the triumph of the Emperor Vespasian and Titus in 71 CE. Just to save some time though, here is a trusty map of the route of the triumph from the Blackwell Companion to the Roman Republic. Now, a while after this preparation, after delivering an oration to his soldiers and rewarding them with sums of money and other special rewards, the triumphator himself was waiting at the triumphal gate, ready to begin the procession. The procession was led by a display of plunder that was captured during the Imperator's military campaign. He exhibited various things such as statues, paintings, models, and even reliefs depicting his own victories. Furthermore, spoils such as jewelry, silver, gold, vast amounts of coin, and even enemy spoils such as armor were also shown. This exhibition of plunder could have lasted multiple days. Next in the procession, the sacrificial animals followed, with the slaughtering priests and the Camilli who brought the holy vessels and instruments with them. The sacrificial animals consisted of either white oxen or bulls, which were common for temple sacrifice at the time. Third in the procession, there was often a display of exotic animals such as elephants or giraffes. This was primarily to excite the people of Rome, as it was more than likely that they had never left the city itself. Enemy captives, especially the rival leader and anyone close to him, followed. The enemy leader was usually dressed up in his kin armor to signify his heritage. The reason they are displayed here is not taken lightly, however. Death awaited them in most cases. If they were lucky enough, they could have been imprisoned instead. Although possible, this was very unlikely. The insignia and arms of the foe leader was also put on display here, his diadem laying on top of it all. From this point, the exhibitions have concluded. It is time to introduce the triumphator. On a circular chariot being carried by 4 horses, the imperator with his purple toga, tunic with gold embroidery, a bow of laurel, and a scepter made of ivory, he arrives as the main attraction. His attire signified him as a near-divine or near-kingly figure. His face and body being painted with red lead, he bore similarity with a statue of Jupiter, backing the idea of his divine look. In the chariot behind the Triumphator was a slave, supposedly holding a gold Etruscan crown above his head. The evidence for the slave's existence is not lacking by any means. From archaeological evidence to literary evidence, it is more than likely that through stitching our ancient sources together, there was in fact a slave present. The slave whispered to the Triumphator, "Look behind you. Remember, you are but a man." This was done most likely to remind the Triumphator that he should not get caught up with his own fashioning in the triumph. The Imperator's immediate family would also accompany him in the chariot, his eldest son, high-ranking officers and various elected officials following closely behind. Finally, at the rear end of the procession followed whole bodies of soldiers who wore laurel wreaths and carried sprays of laurel. They sang hymns to the gods, proclaimed the praises of their military leader, and even sang some rude and vulgar songs about him too. The final destination of the procession led to the Temple of Jupiter at the Capitoline. Here, the announcement was made for the enemy captives to be executed in front of the public. Shortly after, the Triumphator performed certain rites, made offerings, and sacrificed the sacrificial animals to Jupiter. What proceeded after were feasts for the Senate at the Capitoline and feasts for the common people elsewhere in Rome. At this point, the procession is over, and the triumph has ended. Once everybody's had enough to eat and drink, the Triumphator was led back home by musical escorts, bringing an end to the whole ceremony. And there you have it, a quick guide to the form of the triumphal procession.